Alright peeps, been a little while. I'm still wearing Kill Session, it's hot. I've got the fan on, as you can probably hear. So I'm just wearing a single. So doing a video, haven't done one in a while. I'm going to try to get a couple of these in the bank before I start posting them, or at least try to get them out semi-regularly, more regularly. What's been going on in the interim? With me, I guess fitness and health related. Finished cutting. Finished sort of like late last year. Was on a maintenance phase. Wanted to do another mini cut, but just didn't have it in me. So basically put myself to maintenance up until around Christmas. Put on a few kilos over Christmas, but have started sort of around then and subsequently trying to put on muscle mass. So learning some things about that at the moment. Probably gaining at too fast a rate would be my estimation at the moment. I think around Bali last year I was 88 kilos, and then like with maintenance phases went up to about 90, 91, and I'm now sitting at about 94. So like with the 2 kilo increase plus like eating for the last like month basically at like about 300 above maintenance, 400, putting on a few kilos there, focusing on carbs. So I think there's a bit of water, but probably gaining at too fast a rate. Plan is to do a mini cut in next phase, at the end of next phase, so that'll be 12 full weeks of being in a calorie surplus by then. So ready for a mini cut, and then probably another growth phase with a mini cut potentially. I'll have to look at where we're at leading into Europe. So I've got a Europe trip in July to August, so if I can get a cut in there as well, that'll be nice. So today I want to talk about thinking about things over the Christmas break, and going, what do clients need? How can I even out my processes? And one of them is what to do if somebody doesn't want to track. Some particularly older clients have an issue with technology, so things like MyFitnessPal, no matter how much you walk them through it, can just be too much of a barrier to entry, and also too much of a hassle, and also some don't believe it to be the way for a healthier lifestyle. And while I can try to educate on all those matters, ultimately there will be people who just do not want to track. So what can I do as a personal trainer, and what can you do as a client or fitness enthusiast to help lose weight or gain weight or maintenance, anything you want to do with your body without tracking calories per se? So some of the things that I've suggested to clients are to do with like habitual based practices, right? So basically looking at your lifestyle and habits. And sorry, I had a list here that I sent to one of my clients that I'm just trying to find, because I think it's a good basis. So basically, like when you're not tracking and you don't have the hard data, how do you measure output and input? So basically with input, that is food, I tend to go like follow habits such as like limiting unprocessed foods, trying to have lean protein at least for sort of the 3 big meals that most people are going to have, sort of your breakfast, lunch and dinner, and then a post-workout shake to round out your protein intake. Now this, like, I mean, we know that you don't necessarily need to have a protein feeding after training, but it does help in the sense of like if somebody's not tracking, if they don't know where they're at, it gives them a protein serving every couple of hours, and helps them hit their protein goals. So this is more of a pragmatic piece of advice. Several serves of fruits and vegetables a day. So a serve is something like the palm of your hand. So basically I would say a serve of vegetables with lunch and dinner, and maybe a serve of fruit with breakfast would be a good sort of habit to get into. And then just like snacking on like at least another serve's worth of fruit during the day. So maybe for afternoon tea, you could have a couple of pieces of fruit and if you wanted to, a couple of pieces of vegetables. And that might be, say, if you trained at lunch, you might have breakfast, have a couple of pieces of fruit as like your pre-workout meal, train, have lunch, have a protein shake, have a heavy mid-afternoon snack, and then have dinner, something like that. So having, what else have I got here? And so then it would make sure to have those sort of 3 meals in place at least. You can get it through snacking, but making sure you're having those protein feedings. Then there's things like sleeping 7 to 9 hours a night. That's good advice to anybody, whether you're tracking or not. 3 to 4 litres of water a day for women and males. I know I've talked about this before and recommended slightly lower for women, but honestly, 3 to 4 is going to be good for males and females. And limit calorie-filled fluids such as orange juices, non-diet sodas. Honestly, milk in your coffee if you're having quite a few. And honestly, if your goal is to lose weight, if you're having 2 or 3 coffees with, essentially a cup of milk in there, that's 200 or 300 calories a day you don't need. You can fill them full of sweeteners, and we can get into that discussion later because it's been coming up again. But for the short end purposes here, no harmful effects of sweeteners, so go nuts. Okay, I don't mean go nuts, obviously. So that's sort of like your intake. Eat mostly unprocessed foods. So your processed foods would be that I want you to focus on. Because, the Puritans might argue that rice is processed. And it's just well, yes, it is. But that's not really what we're talking about with a whole food diet, is it? So limiting things like packaged foods, sweets, lollies, junk food, obviously. And then just trying to make sure that the food you cook is cooked. So buying your meats, buying your potatoes and rices, and look, bread is fine. It is processed, obviously, but going for a wholemeal option there. Again, we can get into the greater debate about whether wholemeal and whole grain things are actually better. I don't think they are necessarily. They may contain more fiber and nutrients, but if you're having your several serves of vegetables a day, but for those getting into those specifics about what the science actually says with regards to those diet and processed foods and those kind of things, I'm if they're tracking, great, I can look at it and I can see okay, you're having XYZ thing here, let's limit it. But when somebody's not, I'm just trying, it's a broad stroke approach. So yeah, so mostly unprocessed fruits, several serves of fruits and vegetables a day, lean protein with every meal, and then a protein shake post-workout is a good place to start. Several litres of water, 7 to 9 hours of sleep, and then limit your calorie-containing fluids. That's your input, and there may be more. I may come up with a sort of addendum to this video later on. So exercise. So this is usually to my PT clients, so I'm your 1 to 2 sessions a week is good. If you can find a third weight training session in a week, great. And then steps. So basically track your steps, aim for 10,000 as a baseline every day. So that will mean going for walks on the weekend. Even it's practical things like going to the shops and parking further away and then just doing some window shopping for half an hour can get you up to we went to the shops on Sunday, we went to JB's, we went to Coles, and that was 4,000 steps right there. So park far away, walk around on the weekends, catch up with coffee friends, go for a walk, whatever. So having a pedometer, or there are apps that you can have on your Samsung or iPhone that'll track these fairly within our purposes, and then you can invest in an inexpensive treadmill for your house if you feel like you want or need to. I want to because I don't like going outside. I'm just a homebody, so I would rather have a treadmill in my living room that I can do it. But whatever, get them is the point. And then so that can include swims, rides. going to like bounce or ice skating or something like that, like some kind of physical activity per week. Jamie and I have been thinking about, rather than spending money on dinners that like can be quite expensive, may not necessarily fit both of our needs in terms of where we like to eat, and obviously is calories. We want to start doing more like ice skating and going to bounce and those kind of things that are like less expensive and actually like, are rock climbing, are physical activity. Eating behaviors, so going back, to the behavior thing, is eating smaller portion sizes, eating slowly, stopping when full, and eating when hungry. So combining that with what we talked about before, you can have a structure of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Chances are you're going to be hungry at breakfast, but a lot of people aren't. So you can tailor your sort of structure with your plan. So you could wake up and have a protein shake and a few pieces of fruit for breakfast. There's your protein shake, boom. You leave it for a few hours, maybe you're hungry at lunch, it's a big lunch, it's a big afternoon tea, it's a big dinner, boom, fine. But eating when hungry, stopping when full. So I tend to find like eating at my desk at work, I tend to type, have some food, type, and then I get full and I'm like, I don't need that. Something to think about there. In terms of what tracking can you do, so steps is one. The other thing is like weighing yourself 1 to 3 times a week. I tend to like 2 to 3, because you can get an average and it offsets things like, inadvertent weight gain, water gain, all those kind of things. Like I weighed myself on Monday I was 94, Tuesday 96. So like Wednesday again 94. So having a few of those data points there is fine, plus your 7 to 9 hours of sleep, plus your 10,000 steps, and then you can sort of track a rate of loss, right? So if you do your 3 weigh-ins a week and you go like, okay, I'm down 1 kilo, whatever I'm doing is working, don't change anything. You measure yourself the next week, you go, great, down another 0.5 kilo, what I'm doing is working, don't change anything. Measure yourself the next week, okay, I'm down 300 grams, great, not working, it's working, don't change anything, blah, blah, blah. There you go, you've got almost 3, like in this hypothetical scenario, you've got almost a month of fat loss, you haven't had to track. But that's also best case scenario. Let's say you're doing what you're doing, and you get to like the first week's weigh-ins and you haven't lost any weight, so okay, I need to up the steps maybe to 12,000 and also drop, I would say, rather than dropping, say, a meal, I would drop portion sizes. So like, if you're having this much of a bowl, have this much, etc. Try that, weigh yourself, see what happens. Again, play with it, find what works for you. That would be the rough outline of what I would suggest in terms of what you can do if you're not tracking. The problem for me, and I think where it can get tricky, people have been losing weight for years, for centuries, I guess you could argue, without tracking calories and all those things. I've done it myself. The best I've ever looked is when I didn't track. Not because I didn't track, but because I used these principles, right? So I would use my body weight, satiety, I would eat nutritious foods, fruits and vegetables, and I just trained really hard and used the mirror and the scales basically to assess. I don't think I was as big as I was now in terms of muscular size, but I was leaner. But at my leanest, I was bigger now. But the reason I like the data is because it gives me more to measure and manipulate. And you also get to that point where, I've seen it with clients that people who don't track start tracking and they're like, you've got 45-year-old guys who are eating 1,600 calories a day and not losing weight. And you go like, there's a few issues there. There's a misreporting, there's blowing out on the weekend and stuff like that. But you get into those sort of things that like our body can adapt to the sort of the constant food intake that we eat in terms of down-regulating non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So the more you jitter, the more you move around, the more animated you are. Look at my hands. You look at those other videos and I'm like, hi guys, how you doing? Things like that. Your body will find a way to make the calorie intake that you're persisting on for a significant amount of time work for you. And that's what I don't like. I obviously I want to get people eating as much food as possible, given the environment we live in, the obesogenic environment, the fact that there are so many nice foods and things. That's why I like tracking. That's why I like doing it. It's like it's a minor inconvenience. It's a minor setup to get an easy habit going that allows you to look at the position you're in and be like even me, like I found that playing around with my calories in terms of a growth phase, I look back at when I was when I was dieting, I was getting down to 1900 calories and 1800 calories and barely losing any weight by the end there. And I start to just go is that because I didn't have good phases preceding that, or as I think about it now, mixed in with it, well, my calories were at true maintenance and even a little bit above. So paranoid about losing or gaining fat that I would stifle my caloric intake, and that's what so many people who are on the fat loss journey do. They stifle their calories when they want to lose weight, and then they lose a few kilos in the first few weeks, and then it tapers off, and then they don't give a shit, and then they just blow out. And I'm sort of calling for the middle ground for both of those things, having controlled growth phases, having controlled dieting phases. And I think, for me at least, in a few years I may feel differently, that tracking helps. But that's not a rant to say why you should, it's just sort of an explanation of why I do. I think it can be done without, as I've tried to explain today, and it really is just about measuring and managing whatever variables you can measure and manage. I've limited it to steps and weight, and then just having a rough guideline about wanting to eat a couple of big protein-heavy meals, with obviously carbs and a small amount of fats with them. But I don't know. I'll try to put together some more, some stuff that I can actually start tracking with my clients who don't want to track calories. So I might I've got a check-in sheet for people who track, so I might try and put a check-in sheet for people who don't want to track calories but can track their weight and can track their steps, so I can just get an easy printout of here's your weight for the week, has or hasn't gone down, here are your steps. One of my clients gives me his waist, which is a nice thing. It's one of the variables he wants to measure. And then you can just start to play with it, right? You can just go well, I don't know what you're eating, but you're not losing weight, so you're eating too much. And just to hit it again, the reason that's problematic for me is because I don't know if you're eating 1,500 calories a day as a 100-kilo man or 4,000 calories. And if I go to you, lower your calories, and you're eating 1,500 calories a day, it's hard to imagine that a 100-kilo guy wouldn't be losing weight on 1,500 calories. Maybe that's not a great example, but you get my point, is that we don't know. So that person may, through that process, go into sort of a starve and binge thing, which a lot of people do, is that sort of Monday to Friday is 1,500 calories. So they're I've earned these 5 beers and a McDonald's or whatever it is on the weekend. And it's you're eating at 3-5 on the weekends. So you're actually just eating at maintenance. Anyway, this video's gone on quite long. I don't know if anybody's still watching. But those are some tips, hopefully, that if you don't want to track, they're things that you can start. They're easy. It's inexpensive to get scales and weigh yourself in the morning after you go to the toilet and before you eat. It's inexpensive to have a step tracking app. It's inexpensive to eat healthy, nutritious foods, particularly if you're dieting. I'm not saying getting Scotch fillet for every meal. Get the cheapest lean mince, get some rice, get some fruits and vegetables, and you're pretty much ready to go. And that's a $30 to $50 food shop each week. Something to think about. Anyway, guys, any thoughts, comments, criticisms, queries, feel free to contact me on, everywhere that you can contact a person on. Thanks, guys.